right. Welcome to another podcast. Actually, this is the last podcast of 2025, and welcome to the HEF podcast. That is the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. The Home Education Foundation is an organization started by the beloved Brenda Dickinson back in the early 90s. That's the 1990s for all of you young folks that don't know that anything existed before 2000. And just after, in the early 90s, just after her and Craig Dickinson, her husband, pushed for legislation to secure rights for parents to educate their own children in ways that they see fit. And the Home Education Foundation was established as well as home education rights. And this marked the beginning of this right being so clearly marked out for parents to teach their children on their own and set their own standards. Before this, homeschooling had to happen as a connection to private schools called umbrellas, under which parents could register and homeschool. But here in the free state of Florida, we do things a little differently. We go straight to the source. We empower parents directly to educate their own children. And it's because of Brenda and so many of the early pioneers that pushed and fought for those rights and the listening ears of our leaders in the Capitol that we have enjoyed home education freedoms for 40 years. This year, Brenda's 40th year, she's retiring and passing the mantle to me, Jason Crawford, the host of the HEF podcast, lobbyist for home education freedoms, and the communication director. We have a wonderful podcast lined up today. We have some special guests, and I'm not going to show them just yet. So we're gonna put this aside. But I would like to say that this is going to be very, very exciting. And I'm really looking forward to it. I have been trying to get some of these guests on for quite some time. We obviously have Brenda with us, which is fantastic. But I'm going to go ahead and show the panel. You may recognize one of our guests. He's been blazing a trail lately. He doesn't know how to sit still. He's got all the irons in the fire, not just some. And he's doing a fantastic job as a commissioner of education here in the free state of Florida. ANASTASIOS, KAMOUTSAS, welcome to the HEF podcast.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here. Appreciate you having me on. Absolutely,
of course. I'm so glad you're here with us. And we have another guest just above me. You'll see Matt. Matt is also here, and I have quite the introduction for you, Matt, that was sent to me. So let me.
Oh, really?
Let me read that. Matt is a lifelong learner with his start in homeschooling, which he did entirely through all the way through high school in Florida, and his passion for education freedom sparked early. Starting around age 13, he began working on political campaigns and supporting the Home Education Foundation. Thank you for that. Matt holds a business degree and an MA from Florida Atlantic University, where he previously interned for the then rep, Adam Hassner, who is now FAU's current university president. And Matt also earned his law degree from Regent University, and professionally, Matt spent a decade in private equity before joining and leading a cybersecurity and risk management firm, where he now leads an international team focused on protecting organizations from evolving digital threats. Today, him and his wife homeschool their two young sons in South Florida, carrying forward the parent-led approach that shaped his own youth. And he remains a dedicated supporter of HEF's mission to safeguard and expand parental education freedoms in Florida. Thank you, Matt, for being with us as well. And as I understand it, the two of you actually already know each other.
Yeah, no, Matt was a 2L when I was a 3L, so he would have been a 1L when I was a 2L. And it was a real blessing to get to know him and to see that he's in this fight alongside us. It's not a surprise to me, and I know he's doing a great job out there representing Regent, where we fundamentally believe that law is more than a profession. It truly is a calling, and it inspires every single work that we do. It's been an honor of my life, and I think Matt shares the sentiment, to have gone through Regent University and so many godly men and women that led us as professors to impact our careers. It really was second to none.
Absolutely. Bonding over being a few of the only guys from Florida was a quick way to become fast friends. And like Stassi said, the mission of Regent actually very much aligns with the mission of HEF and the mindset that Stassi's bringing to the state of Florida, and as you like to call it, Jason, the free state of Florida. So
yeah, man.
It was awesome in law school. It's awesome to see what he's done since then. So
Well, I'm glad to have both of you with us, however this start happened. And I love the spirit of what you bring to leadership, Stasi. I can call you Stasi, right? On the podcast.
It's better than what others may call me at times. So no worries. I'm good with that.
That's fair. That's fair. I feel like we have this amazing assembly today. Brenda, you have been doing such an amazing work over the last 40 years. And it's something I'm truly thankful for, that this year is the 40th year. And it's also the year you announced your retirement. So it's one that I wanted to kind of end on a very positive note and maybe do some time reflecting back on some of the things that are different. I heard you say before we got on live that, you know, hearing the way Stasi talked, you're like, that's not how things were said in the 1980s. So you chime in for us.
Well, the Commissioner of Education was Ralph Turlington at the time, and they were just absolutely positive that the home education bill would not pass, and were shocked that it did.
Wow.
And so I heard him speak to a group of truant officers right after the bill passed, and he said his intent for having the psychological evaluation in was, and that's all they had in their original bill, was to force those psychologists to never allow a home education student to be successful. In other words, they would never pass their evaluation. So instead of having complete negative with the school system, the teachers unions, and the Commissioner of Education, today we have a whole different situation with our governor supporting us, and also our Commissioner of Education on board with parental rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Stasi, as the Commissioner of Education, I've never interviewed a kid or talked to a kid and, you know, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're like, I want to be Commissioner of Education. I've never heard that roll off their lips. So, like, what is it? What is it that pushed you here, or what is it that called you here, maybe?
God's grace. I mean, honestly, I was a prosecutor down in Miami where my wife and I started off our legal careers. And that for me was very fulfilling and rewarding because I was prosecuting in the community that I grew up in. I'm from Miami. I was able to give back to that community. I grew up in a low-income household with a single parent of 3 kids. And so I knew some of the struggles that many of those victims of crimes went through. Heck, we were victims of crimes numerous times and never got solved, unfortunately, particularly with, you know, home burglaries when you go to work during the day in school. So it was very motivating for me to do that. I was a pretty aggressive prosecutor and wanting to crack down on a lot of the crimes that was taking place, particularly as I elevated my way to some of the major felonies that we were dealing with, armed robberies, had homicide experience. And as a result, when Richard Corcoran became the Commissioner of Education, there was a fellow prosecutor who worked in that office with me, Carlos Trujillo, that sort of recommended me to Richard Corcoran. This is an attorney that you might want to have in your legal counsel's office when he became the Commissioner of Education. And so I was brought up here to work under Richard Corcoran. We thought the major legal challenge was going to be the scholarship program. As you know, in Florida, Bush v. Holmes is still law. And so we were under the impression that when this expansion under this governor took place of the vouchers for students to be provided, once that was going to happen, we anticipated a legal challenge. It never came because the governor remade the court. He appointed Barbara Lagoa and Robert Luck, who were both judges down in Miami where I had practiced in front of. And I think it was Carlos Muniz that he also put on the bench at the time. So he remade the court. It was very clear that this was a court that was going to interpret the law in a way that would have been likely to be favorable for our voucher programs. And what ended up being sort of my major legal case when I was in the general counsel's office was keeping schools open during COVID, something I would have never thought of. And so I elevated to be the general counsel. with some of these major fights. COVID, mask mandates was a big one. Fairness in women's sports was another big one. The intellectual viewpoint diversity survey that took place at higher ed was one. So all this major reform in education that took place under the governor, I had the privilege of being the general counsel, then the chief of staff, then the deputy chief of staff to the governor, and I eventually made my way back to the Florida Department of Education as the commissioner. So kind of unconventional, but the Lord works in mysterious ways, and he paved the path for me to be where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. You know, time just gets away from us really, really fast. And I don't know exactly how much time you have with us, so I want to make the most of it. And if you've got something that you wanted to say, I want to give you time to just kind of put that out there. Before I do that, I promised my son, my 6-year-old, that I would ask you the question that he asked me to ask you. Because he was like, what's the commissioner of education? And I was like, well, he's like the man at the very, very top of education in Florida. And he goes, well, what does it feel like to have all that responsibility?
Yeah,
my 6-year-old.
Well, he's wise beyond his years. And the truth is, you have to be unapologetically convicted in what you believe in. And I said it when we were on the call before we started. Our priority here is putting students first. What does that look like? What does that mean? It means when anybody gets in the way, we're going to call you out. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care, what exactly that looks like or the blowback that comes as a result. We fight for teacher pay. I know that the teachers union is someone we call out frequently because of some of the things we're seeing, and there are specific examples like in Lee County where they're trying to mandate collective bargaining when the superintendent's trying to get the highest performing teachers into the lowest performing students or lowest performing schools. We want to incentivize that. We want to encourage that. We want to put students first, and we don't want that bureaucracy of collective bargaining getting in the way and delaying those teachers from getting in front of the students. So those are fights we're willing to take on. School board members, we're bringing accountability back and making sure that they understand, look, it's not to out or embarrass anyone. I actually get criticized often that I'm anti-public school. It couldn't be further from the truth. I went through the public school system in Miami-Dade College. What I'm trying to do is make it a better product so that they realize that the enrollment numbers that are decreasing significantly are a result of parents not being satisfied with the product. And so we're trying to improve the product by making sure that at the school board level, at the superintendent level, at the teacher level, folks understand what the expectations are of parents so that they are able to utilize that as an option for their child if it is the option that best fits that child's needs.
Yeah, I think that's such a distinct nuance is critical. I'd like I've seen a lot of what you've been putting out lately and the things that you've been doing with Hillsborough and Alachua and, like you said, Lee. There's a lot to follow. You're doing quite a bit. And I think that there is the ability to see you as a anti-public school figure, but I know that in our conversations, that's not at all how you come across to me. And I appreciate that you honed in on, improving the product is the thing that it will bring back trust, and that's critical. I think that's so important. Yeah.
Agreed.
Matt, you're so quiet. I haven't turned any of the questions on you.
No,
But you're quite in a position of leadership yourself. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think, unapologetically committed, like Stassi said, is a key to leadership in any area, any field. And he's obviously taken that to education in Florida. And I think one of the most important things when you talk about home education and you look at the options and the products that are available, I'll tell this often. I was schooled at home. We have 2 boys who are now homeschooled. It's not for everybody. But when you look at what the options are for individuals in the state of Florida and across the country, you have to find what the solution is best for your family. And, the parental rights that we've seen be in jeopardy over the last 5 years, really brings that to bear. But we want to, in Florida, like Stassi said, we want to create the best educational choices that parents have. And I think, special thanks to HEF and the legislature in Florida over the last 40 years, but we've done that for home educated students to make that product the best. And it really does bring a lot of value back to the parents and a lot of power back to the parents to know that this is an avenue that they can choose if it works best for their family to educate their children.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I think that I really appreciate, Stasi, I'm going to move our graphic here over to our blog. We put one of your recent letters up that you sent out to parents. And I just appreciate, you said the importance of family-led education and thoughtful choice has long been recognized. And you quoted Proverbs. You're really pushing parents and parental involvement. And I saw the letter that you put out to teachers and parents in public and charter schools as well. And I appreciate the same kind of push, of getting parents back involved and empowering parents to kind of get more engaged. And I think that sometimes there's this vacuum that's created. Like if we're pushing back on the establishment a little bit and saying, hey, make more room for parents' authority, make more room for parents' decisions, but parents aren't coming into that space to stand up and start playing that role. We abdicate that role out. There's chance for the snapback, right? What are some of your thoughts or recommendations for parents on how to get involved more, and maybe treat this on like a public school and perhaps give me another one for like home education families, where if they're seeing what's happening in our 2025 and they want to be more involved, to say, hey, let's protect rights. Kind of give me both angles, if you don't mind.
Well, my very first step as Commissioner of Education was sending a letter similar to the one I just sent at the halfway point of the school year to all parents. It was important to me that they understood that we were setting the tone, that there are rights that have been enumerated over the past several years under this governor's leadership and the legislature. And half the battle is informing people, making them aware of what is out there, what is available to them. What's unique is that I don't know that a Commissioner of Education's ever emailed parents directly. And so being able to send that out to all parents, I think resonates. I think folks see this very long Greek name and wonder, what is this being sent to me? And they'll open it up, and it's funny to see some of the controversies around these letters. I will be very firm and strong in the stance that we are not going to treat children differently based on the way God created them. That invited a letter from some atheist organization being critical about how I referenced God in the letter. Look, at the end of the day, we still are one nation under God, and when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, as our students do every day, they acknowledge that. And so we don't have to hide from that. That is not a violation of separation of church and state. People don't understand the difference. I recently referenced in that letter you just were talking about, that if you teach a child when they're young, when they get old, they will not stray from that teaching. Nobody would disagree with that statement, but boy, if it has a Proverbs in front of it, now it's controversial. And so I think you're seeing things that we're doing here where it's embracing some of the traditional values of our country's founding. The fact that we do the Pledge of Allegiance at the Florida Department of Education in and of itself was a controversy that garnered media attention. I still don't understand why, because it's led by military veterans as a way of honoring their service to this country. And so my point is twofold. Number one, we're communicating with parents more so than any Commissioner of Education has, so that they understand their value and the importance of their involvement in their child's life. We don't denigrate educators in the process either. We tell them to work together. It's important that both teachers and parents are involved in the child's life, whether it's at the traditional public school, at the charter school, even at the private school level. I know it's different with home education, and I think there are significant strides that have been made over the years where we have also empowered parents. Brenda was there when we were working behind the scenes with the legislature, and there was criticisms of some of the purchases that were taking place, and there was an attempt to limit the power of the parent when it came to these programs. And we were able to work it out to protect the integrity of the program and the parent's right to choose what is the best option for their child's education. And so there are a lot of battles you see on the front end that you referenced on my Twitter account, but there's a lot that we do behind the scenes as well to make sure that parents are truly empowered, and showing that we're not afraid to take those arrows. Parents are going to be attacked, unfortunately. And we have brought light to that as well, whether it's at school board meetings, whether it's interactions, with their teacher or the principal, the administration of a school, or there's some sort of bureaucracy with the home education parents. You and I have worked, Jason, on issues, again, behind the scenes where it seemed like the home education family was being treated differently than a student who's going to a traditional public school. And so we want to make sure we're providing parity, we're providing as much opportunity as possible. And today's home education landscape is so different. The fact that it's doubled in number over the past decade is a big deal that communicates parents are voting with their feet, but it's also an option that seems to be more practical for students. Extracurricular activities, sports programs, these students have access to all of it. And I appreciate the governor standing strong on his convictions with this, because what was some of the criticisms homeschool families would receive is, the social components of development for children are not there because they're isolated and they're home. And it's like, no, this is a new day and age. And with all co-ops that are out there, I know plenty of homeschool families who I've interacted with their children, and they are thriving socially. So that stigma and that criticism is long gone in the state of Florida, because we have truly empowered these parents to put these students first and give any educational choice option to any family and any child.
Man, thank you. That was a lot, and I appreciate it. Dina, one of our community members, chimes in, and she says that was very cool as a parent to get that email from you, Stassi. Well done. And then Brad on here says, thank you, Stassi and Jason, for standing up for homeschool and all the kids in Alachua County. You guys made it happen for PEP students to have their legal rights under Florida statute happen here. So, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Tina, for chiming in. Matt?
Jason, let me add something as a homeschool parent now. So a lot of the benefits that Stassi has listed, some of them I got to take advantage of as a homeschooler, played it at sports, at schools down here in sports, the extracurricular opportunities, the opportunities for dual enrollment. There are states across this country that are just starting to experience those benefits that I experienced 20 plus years ago as a middle schooler and high schooler in Florida. And so not only have we taken ground there, but in the last 20 years, we've continued to expand and continued to grow and continued to create, one of the most homeschool friendly states in the state of Florida. And, now I'm seeing it from a different angle as a homeschool parent, but the opportunities have expanded and grown. The entire homeschooling landscape has completely changed in the last 20 years. And we continue to see our representatives, our leaders in Tallahassee, starting from the governor on down, continue to advocate for the best options for families for education. And we continue to see the benefits of that as homeschool families across the state.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that one of the beautiful things that I've been doing with my kids lately has been an established morning routine that ends with us, working out together and kind of having that bonding time through those physical moments where, man, they just learn resilience and challenge and pushing themselves, that mental elasticity and resilience early, and the freedom to be able to do that and to pour into them in that specific way. It's a unique thing, the access to extracurriculars provides, because it's one of those things that on that same arena and in that same arena, you get to rejoin back in to the whole community and mix it up with that same mindset. And I think that some of those sports life lessons are the ones that you carry longest with you than, say, maybe trigonometry or algebra. Those are not necessarily like not valuable, but the ones that, like, when you're down and it's tough, you get a second wind and things like that from that you push through, tend to come from sports, which is one of the reasons why I know that we've got a bill up, Senate Bill 538 that's coming up. I'm very, very closely watching that language, because what happens to extracurriculars, I think, kind of shapes all of education, kind of shapes society as a whole, because it's really that arena that really kind of pushes. And thank you, Brenda, for being there all along the way, pushing for those things and seeing those things happen, because as it started, we get the right in 1985, but that didn't mean all the building blocks were in place. A lot of us coming into it now look at it and we go, oh, wow, look at all these options. It's great. It's totally different now. And when you were there, your kids hit high school and you're like, oh no, transcripts, they won't accept them, so let's fix that, you know, and oh, we should be able to dual enroll, let's jump on that, and bright futures, and you know, the list goes on. But if you're jumping in as a new parent now, that difference of where we were to where we are might be lost, and I think that we have to keep that history alive, because if we don't, we forget just how valuable and hard fought what we have is. Brenda, do you want to chime in?
I think that's true of the freedoms that we have as a country. If we don't review where we've been and the people that have given their lives for those freedoms, we tend to take them for granted. And it's very sad that people just take where they are and move on, and they don't realize how much has been done to provide those freedoms. But it's a constant fight, and I'm thrilled that we have Stassi and Governor DeSantis in place, and many, many others, including representatives who now home educate their children, that are going to continue the fight that I've spent 40 years doing. And we have to continue to fight, because there are those people that would love to make it so that you don't have the rights that we have now. So thank you, Stassi. Thank you to Governor DeSantis and those legislators who have really stepped out and taken a stand to protect parental rights.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to echo that, and I don't want to share anyone's name unless you feel comfortable doing so. I'll let you do that. But I have to give a shout out to your staff. Your staff are amazing. They are hard working, available, quick, and they're targeted. They're focused. They don't get caught in emotional details. They go right to work, and I appreciate fully them, and I want to give them a shout out as well. If you want to pick on anybody in particular and say names, I'll let you do that, but I'm not going to blow anyone's cover.
Well, I will say I agree with you, Jason. I always get nervous in my state board meetings. I make it a point at the end of the meeting to go one by one through the staff that are in the crowd to thank the ones that are there. Yeah. And I always feel like I'm inevitably going to forget someone who's there. So I will just generally say, yes, I have a great staff led by my chief of staff, Steve Conkar, who does a great job. He drops everything on the dime when I tell him, look, this is important to me. And he knows when it comes to homeschooling, there is a customer service component to what we do at the Department of Education. And we want folks to feel like they're getting from us what they don't get from the district. That's with homeschool families, that's with charter families. We even do it with traditional public school families. We want them to feel that there's an outlet that they can go to when they feel as though they are frustrated at the district level or at the local level. And so, look, I mean, I know our way is unconventional, but the reality is we do fundamentally believe in dropping everything to make these families feel as though they are a priority, because that is why we do what we do. To that end, because I do have to hop off. I know you have a question for me related to 2026, and I'll get to that. But I want to talk about sports a little bit, just because I just finished coaching my 3rd and 4th grade girls in soccer. Awesome. And I will tell you, our final game was against 3rd graders. It's a co-ed league, so it's boys and girls, because they're so young at that point that they're not as injury prone as you see in some of the middle and high school sports, and that's why there's variation between men's and women's sports. But it's co-ed up until about 4th, 5th grade. Long story short, their final game, they played against a 3rd grade team. These guys were double their size. It was all boys. Our team was truly mixed co-ed, half female, half male. So I think it was 5 females, 4 males. And they held their own. And it was a tie game at the end of it. But I, as the coach, was like, man, we are going to get blown out here. And your main task as a coach is just teaching them their positions at that age, teaching them the game. Like, you don't really care about winning or losing. You just want them to acquire that skill and develop that resiliency to understand, look, there's going to be some tough fights ahead of you in life, but you can overcome them. And honest to God, it was a win for us to tie that game. And we were winning at one point, which was incredible to me. But they fought hard and they fought in their positions, and it really develops a certain skill in these children. And there's a special bond you develop, especially as a father, with your children, to see how they feel after overcoming such adversity. So I was extremely thankful for that. Going into 2026, I'd like to do more of that. This is from a personal standpoint. As you know, a staffer for the past 7 years, I can tell you there were a lot of sacrifices that took place, a lot of nights where I wasn't able to get home for dinner, and that was very difficult for my wife and I, just because I entered fatherhood wanting to be involved and wanting to be around. And you know, I do believe that those sacrifices were for the greater good of, you know, benefiting all students across our state and making sure they have a world-class education. But I am super thankful that I'm able to be around a lot more now as Commissioner of Education than I was, particularly as Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Ron DeSantis, where education was just one of like 12 agencies that I had. So it was very busy during that time. And I had emergency management last hurricane season when we had 3 hurricanes back to back to back. So it was, you know, very rewarding work. You're helping people who are in great need, and I appreciated my time there. But it came with its challenges, and you know, to not be with your family when a major hurricane's come into our state it's stressful. But you know, we were able to overcome those challenges, and I'm extremely thankful for a loving wife, an understanding wife, and my 4 daughters who have been real champions through it all. So I'd like to be much more present in 2026. We have an interesting structure now because my wife is a judge in Orlando, so she's having to do the work week there, and then she'll drive back on like Thursday nights or Fridays. So I'm a single father commissioner of education for the next 6 months. We've been joking about in my household. So balancing that has been interesting, but really rewarding. I joke with my girls, you know, hey, my name's Dad. Very nice to meet you. I know Mommy's been doing the heavy lifting the past couple of years, but we're going to get real close over the next 6 months. So it's been a real blessing in that respect. From a policy standpoint, though, I think you're seeing some unique stuff, particularly in higher education when as it relates to school safety. We haven't done the Guardian program like we have at the traditional public schools or at the charter schools or even private schools if they elect to have a guardian. And I think we even did the early learning providers if they elect to have a guardian. Why did we do that? You know, they got all worked up in the beginning when we first started the Guardian program. You're giving teachers guns. This is going to be dangerous. And, you know, as is often the case, many of those criticisms never ended up coming to fruition. But the reality is this is an affordable safety option for schools to have something that is not as expensive as law enforcement or security. So that's why we believe in the Guardian program, because you are helping out these education programs feel safe, feel secure, and do it at an affordable rate with folks who are highly specialized, highly trained. This is 144 hours of training that goes into it. And then the governor, I saw in his recommended budget, did hardening measures for our colleges and universities to help build out you know, surveillance or fencing or whatever is needed to be able to protect these students. So that's a big thing for us going into 2026. Obviously, schools of hope, the governor is invested in those hope operators as well, and you know, underutilized space at traditional public schools that the taxpayers are fully funding, getting a better use of their dime and allowing a charter program that is a high performing charter program in, you know, communities that are often struggling academically. That is the motivation behind it. Brenda can tell you, just like it's like when I talked to Governor Bush, school choice has always been met with criticism year after year. This is nothing new to the experts who've been dealing with this fight for the past 2 decades. And so I appreciate Governor Bush. I know he put out an op-ed. I put out an op-ed making it clear that this is going to provide additional choice options for families. And don't be surprised by this criticism. I guarantee if there's another bill that is passed this session, there will be criticism. To that end, the last thing I will say with the 2026 session, there is a lot of defense we'll have to play as well. Just like we played the past couple of years, and I know Brenda was with us working with the legislature and the governor, we have great choice programs, and we want to maintain the integrity of those programs. We want to make sure that parental empowerment is not infringed upon. And so you may see bills here and there that pop up that become, you know, are seen as an affront to that. And so there is a component of us having to play defense and making sure that we work with legislatures and explain from the parent standpoint why these bills are problematic. And so I think that's what you're going to see in 2026.
Awesome. Yeah. Listen, thank you for your leadership, and I appreciate the ability to kind of have that connection and be able to work with you and collaborate. That's really something that I value highly. And I want to go back to our comments real quick because we had a couple that came in for you. Kim shows up and she says, I agree with Dina. The email was very meaningful and thoughtful, so thank you again for that. And then Dina came back a little bit later and says, thank you, Stassi, for your personal sacrifices. May your family be solidly blessed and bonded by your example and your efforts. So I appreciate the time you've had with us today, and I know that you've got to get on to other things, but I'm thankful that you were here. And Brenda, is there anything that you want to say before we let Stassi go do his thing?
No, I just want to add to it how much we appreciate working with you when you were in the governor's office as well as the commissioner. And you're a great leader. Thank you so much.
100%.
Well, I appreciate it. It's an absolute honor. And truth be told, I mean, from dust we come, to dust we'll return. So what we do in the in-between is going to be kind of the legacy we leave behind. And I fundamentally believe, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because I'm telling you, there is something being molded in you and your character that will ultimately lead to the maturity and completeness of your life and where you're supposed to be. So I'll leave it at that. See, that one's not controversial, but then when you say, well, that's how the book of James opens up, then everybody loses their mind. But it's true. I mean, if this is something that you are fundamentally convicted by, you don't have to drop the quote to scripture, or the reference to scripture. You just speak it, and boy, you can ask my wife. You can even ask Matt. He's known me since law school. I am far from perfect. I am fallen, and that is why I need a savior. But the reality is, it's a good reminder that just because we're fallen doesn't mean that we can't fight for truth, and we can't fight for virtue, and we can't stand firm on our convictions. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, we're thankful that you're standing with us and leading the charge. Thank you, sir.
Happy to do it. Thank you. Have a blessed one.
Yes, sir. You too. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Matt, you're welcome to hang around.
That's
We're going to
awesome.
have our board come on. What are your thoughts? I'm going to text them and get them all on.
I think what's key, and going into the 2026 session, going into the 2026 election year, is, homeschool parents and kids have the opportunity to get involved and have the opportunity to have the ear of their representatives, have the ear of their senators, the governors, leaders like Stassi and others. And I think that that's a key opportunity. And for a lot of homeschool students, and families, it can be a missed opportunity. But when Stassi says we're in a position where we have to play defense, best defense is the opportunity to walk through the halls in the Capitol, to visit your reps and your senators' offices, across the state, get involved in the election process, get involved in the legislative process. And that's just a key opportunity for homeschool families. And I can tell you firsthand, and I know Brenda and you, Jason, have experienced it, it makes a difference. And so building those relationships and giving them an understanding of how these affects your daily life, how this affects family, how this affects your children's and their education is key to the process. So don't miss out on that opportunity. And with that, I'll let you guys go, Jason.
Awesome.
I want to say one thing about Matt before you go is I remember one key time that I needed to get to a representative who happened to be Adam Hassner. And because of Jason's work in his campaign, I called his mom. What did I say? Jason, I'm sorry. Matt, because of Matt's work in his campaign, I called his mom and I said, do you think that you could get in touch with Adam Hassner? She said, I can't, but Matt can. And so I called him and I said, I need you to get this message they were on the floor and I couldn't go in, to Representative Hassner. And he said, is this your only ask? Yes. I mean, it was the end of session and I needed him to know what was going on. And so because of Matt's work in the campaign, he helped us get it over the line. I mean, I'll always remember that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Matt.
Enjoy the rest of your year.
We will. Appreciate you. Yeah, and I just want to, before we get too far from what Matt said, I want to echo that if there are parents who, or teenagers who are interested in being active, we've had a lot of things happen in 2025, and we have a huge Discord server. It is growing daily, and there's a really cool area in the Discord server for debate, and we're kind of writing that alongside the governor's Florida Civics and Debate Initiative, where we can take some of their prompts and throw them in there, and you guys can practice. I don't know if you know it, but home education students can register and go compete as individuals. They don't have to be associated with any particular school. All of that is able to be done, but sometimes having a place or people with whom to practice is the challenge. And so there are local co-ops that are great, but for people who don't have those, or they just want a little bit more, there's a cool little debate arena inside our Discord server. But for those who are willing to get involved like Matt did and volunteer and put their time to work in actual campaigns, there's a channel in our Discord server for every county. So if there's a county in which you're looking to coordinate something or be involved or go volunteer, even as a group, this is a great way to get in there and use those county channels to activate that. And, we're always there kind of watching and helping to see if there's things that we can do to support as well. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and I would love to encourage more people to make use of our Discord server in that way, because that's why we built it and put it together. And putting that aside, I'll go back to welcome to the board of directors. We're going to do a kind of wrap up of 2025, since this is the final podcast of 2025. So we'll welcome Dina, Kim, Sue, and Brenda. You're on the board too.
Yes.
What did you guys think of 2025? Let's start with just an open-ended, take it as it comes. If you want to use the raise hands function, you can. I see that you guys are all on mute, so whoever, it's a free-for-all. Go for it.
2025 was an interesting year. One of the biggest things that I saw in our group, particularly, for those that don't know, I run a co-op out of the Tampa area. And the interesting thing that I'm really seeing this year in our organization is the diversity, and not in a traditional sense, but in the sense of the way that people are educating their kids. I'm seeing more and more differences in how people are, which co-ops they're joining and which curriculums they're using, and Charlotte Mason versus unit studies, and all of those little nuances. We're just seeing more and more diversity in that. And it's really interesting to see everybody coming together and really, working together and understanding the differences and starting to respect a little bit more the differences of each other, and recognizing that I can't just give you advice based on what works for my family, because that's not going to work for your family. But listening to people take the time to find out, like, what is the goal of your home education? Like, what purpose are you serving in it? And then going from that place of giving advice. So that's been really cool to see this year.
That's really awesome. Yeah. So, I didn't think about, I'm sorry. I didn't think about introducing each of you and telling a little bit about you. But yes, Kim is also responsible for the Tampa Bay Homeschool Conference, as well as a co-op there in Tampa. Dina Fox, who is with us, she has ran a home education instructional program for, Dina, I don't want to age you, but it's been over 20 years, I think.
Yes.
And they have an amazing board. My wife, Crystal, served as the director of the program for a couple of years, and Dina is actually how I came to be introduced to Brenda and why I'm sitting where I'm sitting right now. So thank you, Dina.
Thank you,
You're
Dina.
welcome. I've made several marriages that are still going strong too.
Is that your next career?
I'm a Yenta.
And then we have Sue. Sue, thank you for everything that you've done throughout the years supporting Brenda. Sue also runs a large home education instructional program community down in South Florida called HEED. It's HEED, right? Not HEED Adventures and HEED. They're two. Yeah. And she has equal experience historically. I won't go into the numbers. We're not going to do math this late in the year. But thank you all for being on the board, and thank you for being with us today. Does anybody else want to chime in on kind of some of just what they've seen in 2025? What stood out to you?
I think the PEP scholarship program has really changed a lot of things for good. It's also had just a cultural effect. We've had family. One of my adult children came to me and said, the difference, Mom, is we were a homeschool family. It's who we were. It's what we did. It was all encompassing. I don't think we took one vacation where I didn't somehow tie it into history class or something. But the families now, and this isn't a criticism, but the culture now is that parents are saying there's a problem with the school system, so let's bring our kids at home and do something different. So a lot of them are still, both parents are working. So it's a cultural shift, not a judgment of good or bad, just a difference. And the scholarship has enabled people that were on the fence to have this extra income, expenses paid for, so that they could make this choice. And I think anybody that takes education back into their own hands for their children, that's a win. Yeah. It just may be different than what it looked like when, what Brenda did was different than what I did. It looked different. And today, of course, it's different than the parents today are different than how I was. But all throughout that period of shifting, the one thing that I appreciated you guys talking about in the earlier section was the way Florida has evolved. And I just want the parents today to know, like, that did not just happen. That happened session by session. It happened season by season. It happened conference by conference, as Brenda shared, and as parents got involved and as she worked. And in the early days, a lot of times it felt like there was just a couple of us working to try to do that, with Brenda in the lead. And so for me, 2025, the transition that I saw happen at HEF would be one of the highlights of mine for this year. And I'll talk more about that maybe in a little bit. But I think to see our organization that had a lot of years of struggling, a lot of years without income, a lot of years of just God doing what we couldn't do, which is a good place to be also. And to see it through your leadership, Jason, and to see the transition that occurred between you and Brenda this year would be an answer to probably a couple decades of prayer.
Wow. That's heavy. As you're talking, I was listening to Kim and I'm listening to you, and there's this connection between seeing that big wave of new incomers and that cultural shift and finding the traditional old school homeschoolers, which I consider myself to be, because I'll give you an example in just a second. I consider myself to be among them, and seeing the newcomers and watching that shift kind of come together where we're figuring out how to be one, have one voice, because we all have to find the thing that we believe in. And I think there's this, reliance on the system, but we don't trust it. We've broken out of it. What do we do next? Well, where's my next system? And so there's this mindset of jumping from one to the other. And there's the traditional old school homeschoolers who are like, there's no system. You piece all your stuff together. You make all your sandwiches however you want. You put on them whatever you want. It's completely free and open. And watching that kind of shift happen is definitely what I'm hearing from the conversation. When we were in the hospital this week, Crystal gave birth to our fifth, and after that, the girls wanted to be there, and so after that, they're there, and the doctor, I see the placenta sitting, not to get graphic, but I see it sitting over on a tray, and I was like, hey, do y'all want to see what that is? Because I'm a homeschool dad. And so they're like, I'm like, you may not get a chance to see one of these again before going to college or something, like, and you're studying them. And they're like, I don't know. The doctor goes, yeah, come here. So there we are, holding it up. And she's like, here's where the veins are. And here's what it looks like. And the baby sits in the sack like this. And then this happens. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is home education. Like, it's just always everywhere, all the time. And I think that we've got newcomers coming in who are like, where's my box? Where's my kit? Where's my stuff? And watching these kind of two cultures kind of come together and find that singular voice of, hey, your parents, you're empowered. They're your rights to teach your children. Own that, express that, protect that. I think
yes,
that's
absolutely.
Go, Dina.
Amen. That's the biggest thing I've seen in 2025. Up until the PEP program started, I kind of saw myself and my cohort of contemporaries in home education as kind of retiring and handing over the baton. And then when PEP happened, we saw pretty quickly, no, we cannot go anywhere for a little while, because I have had to do more educating of people about their rights and freedoms than I've ever done in the last year and a half. I find myself getting phone calls and having meetings. So I do a lot of consulting with people who are completely unaware at how free they really are. They just cannot believe it. It's kind of like, it's really fun, honestly, doing that. It feels like I'm sharing the gospel with people for the first time. The homeschool gospel, let me tell you, you can be set free. But the numbers of people have grown so quickly. And as both Sue and Kim said, we're seeing such diversity in what people believe education is at home. I don't even like to call it homeschooling. Parent directed education really is what they're able to do. It also heightens our responsibilities as the veterans and the waymakers for the legislation to educate constantly, because they don't understand their freedoms. And if you don't know what your freedoms are, you can't keep them. So I find myself sending people, I have all of the statutes, like in a list. I send people a document. I want you to read this. I want you to read that. I have a list of books that I recommend they read really quickly. And in some ways, I feel like I've jumped back 30 years and going through all the things I went through to understand and learn. Now there's a lot of options that did not exist 30 years ago. But people don't understand their freedom even within those options. They have all of this freedom. And that's what I think the Home Education Foundation and Hef Connect have as the mantle right now, is an immense amount of mentoring the next generation so that we can safely hand over the baton. If we hand it over and they don't know what their goals are and what their freedoms are, they will all be lost. So we need to empower them to do new things, but we also need to help educate constantly right now on what the foundation, the freedoms, and the principles are.
I wanted to ask this of Stassi, but we ran out of time, obviously. I wanted to have Matt and Stassi together because they're both lawyers, and kind of ask them this question, but I'll ask you guys instead. In the Florida Constitution, 3 times in the education section, it mentions a high quality education, high quality. How do we define the quality? How do we push for quality? And I think a lot of the parents coming out of that system mindset are going to be thinking about that, right? They're going to be concerned about, well, how do I do this right? How do we do it well? How do we push for quality without becoming conformity? And how do we prove quality without sacrificing our autonomy, right? So I think that's the question of standardized tests. I think that's the question of curriculum. I think that's the question of like all the little boxes and the many things. How do we push for one and enjoy all the freedoms and the options without losing self-governance and autonomy? What do you think is important to focus on? You're muted. I'm sorry. I just don't hear you.
I don't hear you either.
Oh no.
We lost
your audio.
Sue, just talk and I'll lip read and say it for you. I love it. Yeah.
While she's getting her audio sorted, does anybody else want to go?
You know, when you say that, my first thought is quality education. Well, the reason that people are legitimizing the home education world, and we're getting the numbers, we're getting the recognition, and now potential funding, if you want it, is because of what has been done for the last 40 years. It's not because of some new thing. That there's the basics of education are the basics of education. There's nothing new about that. If you want to use a different method to get there, whatever, but standardized testing has not been required for home education in Florida for the entire time. We don't need to have a test to tell us it's going well. We know it's going well because our outcomes have gone well, and we see where everyone is. You have to go.
Okay.
So
Bye.
I feel as though there's going to be a huge temptation to try to define these, what education has to include or is, which is counterintuitive to how that we threw off the fetters and look at the results we've gotten.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think it's really defining success and not letting culture define success for us, because success for me, looking back at 4 grown children now, is seeing them walking in the destiny that God had for them, whether that's doctors and lawyers or house painters and beauticians. It doesn't matter. God doesn't put a category or a class on anything. We want to see each one of our children prepared for what God's called them to do. And it's going to look different. So there's not going to be one answer for success. I think as a believer, to be connected with your children and to see your children walking with the Lord, that's success. Know that you're going to spend this life with them and you're going to spend the next life with them. And that happens with time. It happens with connection. Connection is experiencing life together. And to do those extra 15,000 hours or whatever it is as a homeschool parent with your child, that's connection. Sometimes good connection, sometimes not so good connection, but it's connection. And I think that that's the opportunity we get when we make that choice. And we're putting the rights back into the parents to say, this child, these are his giftings, these are his talents. We're going to raise him up in those giftings, in those callings, to do what God's called him to do. And that's going to look different for every family and every child in that family. It's going to look different too. But teaching them the character, the responsibility, to love God, to love others, that's universal. And that's the standard that I think is a higher calling than how high are we going in math?
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. Tina, you leaned forward. I mean, Brenda, sorry, you leaned forward like you want to say something. Go for it.
I just think success is, as Sue said, finding every child's bent. What is he going to do and what does he like to do? Which you can't do in a public school because everything is customized for a standard for every child. But in home education, you can customize your child's education to fit that child and the way he learns. And the key to success in a home education program and for a child is parental commitment. And if their parents are not committed, they're not going to remain home education parents. They're going to find something that works for their family. But that was something that was said way back in the early years after home education became legal in Florida. One of the people over that office at the DOE, when they were saying, well, how are we going to know that there's success here? And what happens if the parents choose not to do anything? And the man who was in charge of the office then, he said, it's self-regulating. If parents aren't committed to home education, they won't continue doing it. And so he was not worried at all about how well children are going to do educationally. The main thing was, were parents going to remain committed? And it causes a lot of sacrifices in families, sometimes a second income. Many times it's a second income, and they're willing to give up all of the extras in life to be able to do it for their children. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. I really, after all these years, everybody doesn't continue. Everybody doesn't choose home education. But those that do are really committed to the idea of training up their children in the ways they should go, so they won't depart when they're older.
Mhm.
Yeah, I couldn't couldn't agree more. And I'll take this time to plug the Tell Your Story project on our website, flhef.org/tell your story. Because as we're speaking about this subject, Dina, Sue, Brenda has pointed out that defining success when you're not relying on standardized tests or some systematic approach is important, but it's challenging. And we want to be able to show and demonstrate the beauty of homeschooling, the brilliant outcomes. And the Tell Your Story project allows us to do them. You can take a 60-second video and say, here's what we did, some of the challenges we faced, or my student was really into this and we figured out they love this and we started teaching math through all of these things, or teaching, like my family, we love tabletop games. And you can just pour all kinds of math, creative writing. You can make a character that you want to play based off of a historical figure. So now you can pair doing history research with the characters that you made to play them. It's endless, the ways that you can educate your children. And yes, it takes a sacrifice and it takes time, but tell your story in the Tell Your Story project. Go on and upload a video of how you do it and what the benefits are to you, how rich it is, so that we can establish what success looks like. Maybe without the need for standardized tests. I would love for that to become the new norm, that we're like, hey, look at all these wonderful outcomes and how they're learning. It can happen in any of these ways. But we need your help telling those stories. So please take a moment and go consider doing that. Yeah.
And that being said, homeschoolers test highest on standardized tests across the board.
Yes.
Just so you know.
Yes, and you're kind of always surprised as a homeschool mom, because everybody's telling you all the time how they're not going to have as many opportunities and they're going to have to do more, and all three of my olders did well and got their bright futures, a couple of the highest bright futures. And I assumed that it wasn't that difficult then because they got it. But I have so many friends and family whose kids have gone through schools, have graduated, and do not get bright futures, but they got all these amazing grades and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I guess homeschooling works even better than I knew it did.
It must, because I spent half of my time in public school and I didn't score so well on those standardized tests. me no get scholarship.
Yeah. One of the things that I would love to see in 2026 is I would love to see every family that decides to pick up the home education mantle, and that's what I believe it is.
Yeah.
I would love for them to understand their rights, and I would love for them to have their own personal goals for their children and their household. So many people are not coming to home education out of a calling or a goal. They're coming to it running away from something. And if they don't have any goals, they can't aim for anything. They're just running away from what wasn't working for them before. And so that's one of my personal goals in the work I do in the Tampa Bay area and consulting, is to really encourage people to realize that they're putting a mantle on, and that they need to have some beliefs and goals for their family, for their children, so that they can continue walking towards them. Because as you said, it is not easy, Brenda. They're right. It's self-regulating. Because I see family after family after family putting their kids back into school, and most of the time it's because they didn't ever put the mantle on and they didn't have any goals. So that would be my 2026 wish.
Maybe in the new year, Dina, we do a podcast on a mission statement, vision, goals, that exactly what you're talking about, because without that, we know without a vision we perish, but without really that sign on our wall at our house of why we're doing this, on a bad day, I needed to read it. over again sometimes. But I think that's really key. I'd like to see for 2026, really, as far as HEF is concerned, I'd like to see more people get on board. I'm overwhelmed at where we are right now. And that's, Jason, so much to your leadership and your initiatives in that area, because Brenda and I were just about done with bake sales and flyers. That had worked for 20, 30 years. But after that, we were really out of our league, and you've taken us into technology and into really getting the word out. And we need families to understand that what we have and what the earlier podcast talked about, all the freedoms in Florida, we have because we are in there fighting.
Yeah.
And we need to we're thankful for our sponsors like FPEA and the Tampa Bay Homeschool Convention that realize how important the work of HEF is to protect what we have and to not let it get whittled away and to not have any glaring. We're in a pretty good place right now, but this is a time to make up ground. And so I just want to encourage every family not only to know about HEF, but to tell 5 friends about HEF. That's key. To come visit us in May at the Homeschool Convention and introduce yourselves to us and bring friends to meet and to hear Jason's updates and to meet Brenda. I think she'll be back this year again. And that, for that, I really want to see a breakout in that area in 2026, because I believe what God did in bringing Jason in and in the honoring way that we did the transition last May. Thankful to FPEA for allowing us to do that, to honor Brenda and her husband and the work they did for all those years, to now be able to say we're handing it over and we're in good hands.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Brenda?
I'm just grateful that God finally answered our prayers so I could retire. But I wasn't willing to retire for just anyone, because there were a lot of capable people out there, but we wanted the one that God had chosen to be there, who had the skills. And quite honestly, I didn't know Jason. I figured he was another one of those, oh, I'd love to do your job, and then never hear from him again. I thought, okay, we'll see. But he persisted and he investigated, and he just felt the calling so strongly. And the skills that he brings to this leadership position are amazing, and they're timely. And it was time for me to hand over the mantle to him, because as you could see from Matt and Stassi, they're his age, with children their age, and they have a camaraderie that the old folks don't have, because we're not in it to fight together. But I'm just so grateful for Jason's leadership, his willing to move to Tallahassee, uproot his family from where they had been all these years, and step on faith to realize that somehow God would provide the income for him to continue supporting his children. It was a big sacrifice, and I recognize that it took a lot on his part to come. So I know he's committed, and we can see he's in it for the long haul, because they just had their 5th on Christmas Day.
Congratulations.
I'm just really excited about what's coming from this change of leadership.
Well, thank you. I should have gone first instead of last. I don't know what to say after all that. I'm thankful for, I want to echo what Stassi said at the end, which, when you know that you're being challenged, or you know that things are difficult, you're in the right place, because something is being produced, something good is happening, and there's nothing in my mind that's better than a purpose-filled life. I think that having purpose and being locked in and being used, I'll just say it, being used by God and being useful it's everything to me. So I'm thankful for it. I also appreciate the freedom that you have worked so hard, Brenda, and you, Sue, and Dina, to protect, to spread the word and get the word out. The importance of those early people who saw the need, and there's just a difference in generational thinking that I hope 2026 will just magically bring. If I could snap my fingers and see it, I would love to see new generations wake up to the mindset that when I see a need, I just go fill it. That mindset that you've had, Brenda, over the years, there was no, well, if the plan is perfect, well, if this things fall in place, or well, when the time is right, it was just, no, it's needed, and I don't see anyone else. I'm going. And that it's so important. It's the spirit of homeschooling, really. That parents do that with their own kids. Well, I don't see my kid turning out the way I hope they do when they're graduated and on in life. Let's just take the reins back. Let's see the need and fill it. And I hope that we all are waking up to that mindset. I know that with my kids in particular, I've really enjoyed all of that and pushing them through that to wake themselves up. But literally, we have actually put them lots of conversations lately. We've been doing research on Miyamoto Musashi. Out of the 1600s, he was a very disciplined samurai, and they've started a morning routine, and we end it together working out. And it's interesting to watch them make shifts. But when we sit with them after doing something like that, and we have conversations about, how much of your time do you want to spend playing video games? Like, all day. Yeah. And then I go, okay, what if you played 3 hours a day? By the time you're my age, how many years would that actually turn out to be? It's like 8 years. And I'm like, what would you do if you could get any of that back? And as parents, I think I have to ask myself that question a lot with my kids. This is one of the things that drove me into homeschooling, period, which is, man, 8 years of my time with my kids back. Can I recapture any of that? They go to school for like 8 hours a day, not 3 hours a day playing video games, but they're off 8 hours a day. That's a massive chunk of life. What if I could recapture any of those golden years where light bulbs come on and aha moments click, or they find some challenge and we walk through it together? You're the person that they go, that my favorite teacher when I was a kid was because they helped me with fill in the blank. And it's you. It's you in their memory bank. It's you in their heart and in their mind. To me, that's the most beautiful, awesome thing I could even think of. And I will fight for it till I'm out of breath or blood or life or whatever. I think that's the heart and soul of life. I think family is the heart and soul of life. They're your kids. Train them up in the way that you see fit. And when they're older, they'll know that's true. They can't depart from it because they can't get it out of their head. That's how they've come to see the world, and you help them get there. Embrace that. Embrace that. Scholarship or no scholarship. Ignore the details and embrace that challenge and walk into that call in 2026. See the need and be it. Be the answer. I don't know where that came from, but I think I'm done after that. Well, thank you guys for being on, and I really wanted to wrap up 2025 with something positive and thoughtful, and I'm glad you were here for it. Is there anything anybody wants to add before we bring our podcast to a close for 2025?
You want to give your best to your wife?
Yes, ma'am.
From all of us, we love you guys, and we're so happy for you. We celebrate with you, as Brenda said, and we can't wait to meet the little guy.
Yeah. You got
Absolutely. It. I just would say thank you to all of you. You are people who I am honored to sit among. And Merry Christmas to you all.
Thank you. And Brenda, you get last word.
Happy New Year. We look forward to working with you in the upcoming year. And I haven't gone away. I'm just not in the forefront. So I love watching Jason and helping him when we need to work together on something.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And with that,
We're not letting you go away.
No.
We're not.
Happy New Year to everybody who's with us listening, and we're going to close things out. Thank you to parents in the free state of Florida for helping us, being with us as a top sponsor, and thank you to our top sponsors, Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, the TBHC Group. And with that, you can have your 2025.